Good morning and welcome to our UBC Learning Circle, honoring motherhood through teaching Mother Earth from a Syilx Okanagan Knowledge Keeper's perspective with Marlene Squakin. Today's conversation is presented in partnership with the Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health. We'd like to thank the First Nations Health Authority for generously funding the UBC Learning Circle and allowing us to have these conversations. Before we formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect and gratitude that I'm joining you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Please feel free to introduce yourselves and the nation you're calling in from in the chat box. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marlene Squakin. I'm the Learning Circle Manager. I'm Syilx Okanagan on my mother's side, and Hickory, Apache, and Belgian on my father's side. I'll be the moderator for today's discussion, and joining us today working behind the scenes is Cynthia, our production coordinator, and our program assistant, Nicole North Pagan. They will be in the background interacting with everyone in the chat. Finally, before we get into today's discussion, I'll provide a gentle heads up that the topics covered may be sensitive or emotionally triggering. Please make sure that you look after yourself, and if at any point in time you feel like you need to talk to an elder, friend, counselor, or family member, don't hesitate to do so. We have some prompts in the chat for you if you need additional support. Now I'll turn it over to our guests to introduce themselves.
My piece next is Sam Quartos Milkami Sanaik Seal is Samasquist Marlene Squakin. I am from the Okanagan Nation and the Lakes. I'm a descendant of the Lakes in the part of our territory that has been considered extinct. And I am also part of the Smilkameen Valley, and that's from my father's side. So I would just like to acknowledge the territory that we are on, the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, and pardon me for my pronunciations. In Tlachtlahat, my parents are Tui Manny Squakin from the Upper Smilkameen Band, and in Tum Scalita, Hazel Squakin from the Inkameep. I would just like to say that honoring motherhood through teachings of Mother Earth from an Okanagan worldview perspective is what I'll be talking about today. So for our people, you heard me say Tum for my mom. So, and we have, in our language, there's distinctions between male and female. So girls would say tum and boys would say skoy. And so just for some of our language, I would like to say that we have teachings, and I'm not sure where you can see, oh, my hand here. So we have teachings, or I'll go this way because we call them different worlds. And during the time when the Chaptik time is when the earth was frozen, and this is, they're known as myths or legends, but it's the way that we have transferred knowledge is through storytelling. And so we say that during the Chaptik time, then the earth was frozen, and then there was a spark. The tik represents there was a spark, and the earth thawed, and then once something thaws, so this was the first world, and so it the water was created. Our word for water is Syilx, and there's two parts to that. Syilx is the way that humans drink, and Shlaf is the way that animals drink. So in everything is symbolized within nature or on the land, and we have a covenant to protect that water, and it's symbolized in a monarch butterfly. So you will see a monarch butterfly. The design on the outside of that is you will see human tracks and then deer tracks representing the humans and the animals. So we also have a story about butterfly and deer falling in love, and you'll see them dancing together. So all of our knowledge is symbolized on the land. And so, and we say that water is our first and most powerful medicine, and nothing on earth can live without water. And so it's like we have a covenant to protect that water. And within our teachings, then we say that we were given the gift of voice to speak on behalf of those that cannot speak for themselves. So with the second world would be the mineral world. And during this time when the earth was flooded, there's turtle and we say Syilx, and I'm trying to think of the other animal, muskrat. So all of the animals tried to create earth or land, and then none of them succeeded. And the only one that succeeded was muskrat. And so muskrat dove down. All of the animals tried. And you know, when you dive down and then you come back up with water and a little bit of earth, it all seeps through your hands. So muskrat was the only one that was able to do that. And so and the reason muskrat can do that is because there's webbing between the muskrat's paws. And so earth was formed. And so in that world, we say that's the mineral world. So that would be the second world. And our word for earth is temhula. So the tem part refers to tomb, the concept or the term that girls use for their mother. And the whole part means it's spinning, turning, and orbiting. And the hlach part means that it's the land. So temhula means that is a definition for our land or the earth. So our people knew that the earth was round. They knew the concept of spinning, turning, and orbiting. And they knew with that, and because the turtle was used in that chapter, we get the reference to Turtle Island. So within the turtle, then we get into the we call it the moons. So it dictates our year. So on the turtle's back, there are 13 moons or 13 areas that refer to our months. And then surrounding that, there's also demarcations for 28 spaces, meaning our 28 days. So, and those I will refer to later. And so we get that concept of Turtle Island, but it also helps us to understand the symbolism of how we relate those from Mother Earth and from the Temich. The Temich is anything animate or inanimate that's living or non-living. So we believe that everything has a spirit, and we acknowledge and honor those. So when we're talking about what we say, the way that we honor them is Chuhuipla, and that's our word for law, and that's nature's law, and it's found in a spiral, and you can see that in the stars in the universe. You can see that on the earth weather patterns. And you can see that in the way that an eagle flies. It's flies in a circle, as well as in sunflower, the seeds, and in the pine cones. There's a spiral, the spiral of life. And so that's another way that's found on Earth or through the land, and the timich that indicate where our teachings come from. So when we talk about the third world, and we say that each world lives off the next world. So this world is the rooted world. The rooted meaning all the plants, palal. We say palal, everything that grows. And so when we're talking about all of the plants, we consider them food as medicine, or we consider all plants sacred as well. So in the fourth world would be considered the timich, or the animals. And so the animals were the ones that help sustain us. And in the last world is the two-leggeds, the humans. So we are more egalitarian. Egalitarian means that all life is considered equal. And so when we're talking about honoring and respecting, we respect all life. So when we're talking about motherhood, and we're talking about, we say that we have mothers. And so what I'm trying to show you is the mothers and how that relates. And we always hear about grandmother moon, and it takes 28 days for the moon to reach a full moon cycle. So that is symbolic within some of our ceremonies that we use, as well as a woman's cycle. So we say that when the Creator was creating all life, the women, as we know, women are always busy. The women are busy taking care of the babies and the family and the community and the nation. And so when the Creator was giving out all of the gifts for the people or for everything, then the women were the last ones to come. And they say that the Creator had given out all of the gifts to everybody and to everything. But the last thing that the Creator had to give out was the gift of life. And so that's part of the 28-day cycle. We get a reminder every month of that gift of life. And so we and the Creator, we as women and the Creator are the only things that have that gift of life. So with that, then the 28-day cycle, and it's affected by our moons, and the moon affects a lot of cycles, even with on Earth. So the ebb and flow of the tides, our 4 seasons that occur, and when we talk about what happens with women every month, this season right now is the high water time. So that's what we say, that the earth is cleansing itself right now during the high water time. And so we're instructed to not go to the water at that time, because even though water is a powerful medicine, it can also be dangerous. So during that time, then we'd stay away from those waters. And during this time, this purification time for Mother Earth. So when we're talking about the processes that we go through as women, and trying to show you or share with you the process that happens with Mother Earth as well. So for Mother Earth, it will be like a 4-season cycle, and for women, it would be a 28-day cycle. And so when we talk about Mother Earth and all of the teachings and that we receive from Mother Earth, I forgot to mention about Chutin. So Chutin is our word for creator, and the Quil part of that is to be born or to work, and the N part means ourselves, and Chutin is also referring to an individual. So Quil Chutin is the one who made himself. And so our word for being born is Quil as well. So it's something that we make, something that we create, and something that we say that we share, the women share with the Creator, that gift of life. And so when we talk about that gift of life, that we as women, that's when we achieve motherhood. And once that's part of what I'm trying to do, is honor motherhood through the teachings of Mother Earth. And so another aspect for the 7 mothers that we're talking about is our grandmothers. So we have 2 grandmothers, one on our mother's side and one on our father's side. So in our language, we say kakna and stemtima. So always for us, when we say tum, then that's from the left side of our body, and that's from our heart side. So with a mother, we get our unconditional love and nurturing and acceptance. And so from the other side is considered the male side, which is in all of us. There will be a female side and a male side. And so when we honor our mothers, and when we introduce ourselves from our mother's side first, because that indicates who you are and where you come from and your relationships to a place and a family. And then we introduce our father's side. And so that's sort of helps create our relationships and how we are tied to our land and our family and our place. And so the stemtima is the more nurturing one, the grandmother, and the kakana can be more of the discipline and the one that will teach. So we also have from our left side, our aunts, our swawasa would be on the left side, your mother's sister, and your skuki is your dad's sister, and then your uncle on your mom's side would be your sissy, and then your uncle on your dad's side would be smich. So on your right side of the family, your spooky and your Smith are the ones that are the disciplinarians. And those ones would be the ones that teach and discipline. And your Swawasa, we say Swasa for short, and your Sasi, those are the ones from your aunts and uncles that would be spoiling you. They would be the ones that sort of baby you. And that's part of when we're talking about motherhood and parenting, and we're talking about our Okanagan worldview and concepts and styles of how we taught and raised our children. And so it's just explaining how our concepts of motherhood and the teaching, the grandparents are the ones that would spend a lot of time with the babies and the young children and passing on their knowledge. So there's a connection between two generations. And so another one of our, we say another mother that we don't really think about, and which isn't in a lot of practice nowadays, our word for a baby board is mahuel. And the baby board is, the baby is tied into the board, is wrapped up into, we call them receiving blankets now. And they're wrapped up within there, and then they are laced in. And what that does is that provides security. And it's also a prevention method as well. So it helps keep the spine aligned. It helps if the babies, we have prevention methods, if keeping the baby's feet and legs straight. So we will wrap up a baby blanket and put it between the legs and then straighten out the toes. And the bird that goes around the, it's kind of like the roll thing for the board, that's also spiritual protection for our babies. And so the babies will be in the baby board sometimes for the whole year. And what that does is it provides that sense of security. It provides the feeling of that they're safe and able to, they're kept stationary, but then they're able to use their eyes and they're able to observe. And they were carried around with their mothers and their grandmothers, and they were brought out into the world like that. So when we're talking about our babies and our processes that we help guide them through life, then that's part of one of the things that we do. All of my children were in baby boards, and it helped. I think it helps, and there's also other trainings that go along with that. So babies can be trained from a very young age. So we say, when we talk about the medicine, the first medicine of water, one of the first things when the baby is born, we call, we say that the baby will be greeted in the language. And so the grandmothers usually are the ones, the stemtima. If the stemtima, your mom's mom can't be there, then your kakana, the father's grandmother will be there. And as soon as the baby is born, then the baby is greeted in the language, talked to in the language to maintain that language is ongoing into the future, as well as singing if the grandmother knows a song, and so that those songs are also carried. We say that song is our highest form of prayer, and it carries our prayers directly up to the Creator. And so when we and part of that, as soon as the baby is born, we call that cocooning, and cocooning the baby for life. And what the grandmother is doing is protecting that baby, and it's just like making the lifeline of that baby, setting that lifeline. And so the clearing the path for that baby and thinking about who that baby will be and what that baby will do. And so with the grandmother's prayers, we had a veteran from the Syilx Nation that talked about a memory that he had, and he went away to war, and he was, I think, one of two that came back, and of course he had experienced a lot of trauma, but one of the things that came back to him in his healing was he remembered he had that sense of when he was being cocooned and when his grandmother was protecting him. So those teachings go in all aspects of life, and it helps protect for, he was a veteran, an aged veteran. By the time when he thought back and he remembered, he had memories of that time. So when the baby is born, what my mom did is she shaped the baby's face as well. So she would shape the eyebrows and the nose and the cheeks and the mouth. And she was doing it's kind of like an examination. And what I should do is go back one step back, because when we talk about our mothers and when they're pregnant and when they're carrying life, and we say that life comes from the east direction, and every morning we are thankful for our life. When we greet the day, then we say we give our thanks to the Creator every day that we get up. And so when the mothers are carrying, they have a lot of protocols traditionally in the past, and some of that carries on today that we won't know what our grandmothers are doing. And I would like to say that each and every one of us, we say that Syilx Coyote was the transformer for our life, but he always made foolish mistakes. And so we always ended up getting killed. And then there's bits and pieces of him scattered everywhere, all over the place. And then his brother, the fox, would come and jump over him. In some instances, it's 3 times, in others, it's 4. And then he comes back to life. So what I would like to say is that each and every one of you that are listening, we each carry bits of that knowledge, and each one of us, sometimes it's in our body memory or our blood memory, or it's how we raise our children, or it's how we experience our life. And so the teachings for a mother is she will be protected from areas where there is any negative influences. In some instances, then she would not be able to see certain types of animals. She would eat food, and that was also a cocooning process for the mothers. And she would be taken care of. She would be given the best foods, and she would be given, all of her needs would be taken care of by the family and by her partner and her immediate family. We say Syilx for family. And Nux is one, Il is our feelings, and the T, it's kind of like a command, a singular command. It's like somebody that you have feelings for. It's like yours, it's a command to have feelings for. But of course, we don't need to be commanded to have feelings for our families, our children, our loved ones. But that's our word for family. So the family would be providing for the mother, and she had restrictions. So some of the restrictions, I'll mention a couple of the major ones would be not going to funerals, because she's carrying the gift of life, and the funeral is like the end of life. And what they say is that the two spirits would meet, and the spirit that had to return back might get angry and be jealous of that new spirit that's coming to this world. And so it might affect that baby spirit, and the baby might be angry once the baby is born. And every time something happens, there's always a remedy. And so they will say there's certain medicines that we can bath them in, and there's certain things that we do. And even on the baby board, then that piece that goes around like the roll bar, that's also a spiritual protection as well. So for the mother, when she is carrying, then there's certain animals that she would not look at, and she would be kept away from, like if the men were hunting, then they would be kept away from that, and they would just have the processed food, the food that's already finished being cooked or something. And so there was also like the symbolism of just nurturing and caring for our mothers and protecting them and cocooning them and keeping them safe. So there's the concept that we say with the mothers that I wasn't aware that my mom was doing that with me, and we try to do that with our mothers as well. So we have that protective energy, and we try to keep them safe during that time period. And that's just kind of like something natural. And we always, we're always trying to be positive with the mothers and complimenting her. And we're saying always being supportive and giving them positive feedback, because they have that gift of life. And you can see that in the mothers as well. So one of the other, so once the baby is born, then there's a bonding period that we usually, just the mother, immediate family would be the mother, the father, and maybe a caretaker, one of the grandmothers, would be the only ones there when the baby is born. And so what that does is it helps to create that bond. It's a lifelong bond between the mother and the baby, and the father and the baby. And even the grandmother might only hold the baby for necessary care, if the mother cannot take care of the baby. And so one of the things I was going to say is that Tum is our word for mother, but it's also the word for suck or to nurse. And that's a baby's first instinct. And that's a survival mechanism in all life, not just the two-leggeds. And so you will see newborn babies, as soon as they get close to their mother, that they will start nuzzling them, and they will be able to try to nurse from their mothers, not just the two-leggeds, but with horses, with deer, with any animal out there. And that's a natural instinct that they have. It's a survival instinct. And so that's another different definition of tomb. And so I thought that was so, when I first heard that, because we use the term tomb to mean mom. And so then to find out later that it also is the baby's first instinct. And so we usually leave the immediate family alone for 10 days. And then we allow for that bonding period. And then it creates a bond, not just between the mother and the child, but the father and the child as well. And that's what's missing, like nowadays. Sometimes, like in the hospitals, they only allowed the women, and they didn't allow the fathers. But in more recent generations, you will see fathers going right in, and they're being allowed to join within that birthing process. And so we allow that 10-day time period, and we call it presenting the baby, before the baby is presented, and to the extended family and to the community. And so what we do with the baby is, the baby, to me, it reminds me of the stories of when you make wishes for the child. And so sometimes you will see people, they will whisper their wishes in each hand. And what that does is it helps get their hands ready. And whatever, sometimes you can tell when the grandmother is first meeting the baby, then you can kind of tell what kind of child the baby will be, what their life will be. And so I was instructed to do that because one of our elders, part of the cowboys, they said, there's no more cowboys. We want to look for some babies that will be able to love horses. And so they told me to go greet the baby. So that's what I did. And the interesting concept was, and I did that process of, I got permission from the parents, and I greeted the baby in the language, and I greeted the baby with song. And then because I asked them, what do they want, or what did they see? But you could see the different aspects. It's kind of like that spirit, or we say that we're each given a gift when we come into this world. And we are here to learn about that gift and to share that gift, and to be able to nurture that gift. And then that is what we offer to the world, is our gift. So when the babies are being born, for our people, it's important to we look for root diggers, for berry pickers, for hunters, for fishermen, for leaders, and for the horse people, like the horse nation. I call them the horse nation. People that different types of people in different aspects of life. And so when I went and greeted the babies, it wasn't necessarily in the order, or for our people, we say it's kind of gender-based, so that the women pick the berries and get the roots and the medicines, and then the men hunt and fish. But what I found was the one young boy, he was a baby, I kept getting these impressions of medicine, medicine, medicine. And then as I watched him grow, he was a really good root digger. He knew how to see the medicines. He knew how to, he knew the seasons. And then the one that was the horse nation, he just loved horses. And he was around horses and he wasn't afraid of them. And the horses accepted him as well. And he ate, breathed, lived, slept on the horses. And so, and the people that were the hunters wasn't necessarily the boys. And there was, seemed like a shift in the world. And it was some of the girls that were more interested in those type of things. So when you're greeting the babies and then you're sort of seeing their path. And so what we do when we're making wishes, when the baby is being presented, because it gets presented to the family, and then everybody is clearing the path for that baby and putting their wishes into what the community needs and what the family needs are. And we're not really putting our wishes in there. It's just clearing the path for the best possible path for that baby. And so when we do that, and it's sort of the reverse of a baby shower, then the family honors everybody there like as witnesses, and then they receive gifts. And then those people continue to have an influence in that baby's life. So they also continue to maintain contact and help in the raising process of that baby. And so when we're talking about some of the teachings, then those teachings are ongoing, and you will see them throughout that child's life. And so one of the things that I haven't talked about is the sweat lodge during the Oka crisis, and we ran across Canada. And that was one of my questions, is if there was sweat lodges right across the country. And it was interesting that all across the nation in Canada, there was sweat lodges. And for our people, we say it's a place for us to go and pray, but we also have the belief that we can pray anywhere that we want, that we don't need to go to a specific building. We pray early in the morning when we wake up, we greet the sun, we give our thanks, we might have some water, we might think about our family, about how everybody's day will be. So it doesn't, for us, we don't just need to pray in any specific location, but in terms of the connection with the sweat lodge or the spiritual connection, we say that when we're born, then the way that we emerge is usually head first. But we do have people that are backwards, and I won't talk about that right now because I'm talking about the sweat lodge. So we say that the sweat lodge represents the same process, because we say we can go in there to be reborn. And when we talk about being reborn, so we know the mother is carrying and the baby is inside. And so they say the ribs of the sweat lodge, like it honors the 4 directions, and there's actually more than directions. So, and it represents all 7 directions. So north, south, east, west. And then we say Father Sky and Mother Earth. So the 7th direction is in you, in your heart. You, because we say that each and every one of us is made in in like as a replica of the creator. And so when we are having our troubled times, or if we need prayers, then we can go into the sweat lodge. So when we go into the sweat lodge, it's dark there, and it's just like a baby being inside the womb of its mother. And so we say there's 4 stages of life in there. So when a baby's first crawling, well, there's a baby, and then it crawls, and then it's able to go as a child or a youth, and then as an adult, and then an elder. So those 4 stages of life are in there in the sweat as you go in, and you can emerge head first. The way I was born, the regular way, head first. So when I enter the lodge, then I go in backwards, and then I say my scalo squeeze, my Indian name, because they say that's how the spirits recognize you. And so there's 4 levels as well. And so my mom says the bottom one represents the earth, and that there's 4 levels, and then there's 4 levels below. So there's 4 levels on the sweat, and then 4 levels, and then there's this one right here, this one that we're living on, that represents 9. And there's the 9 months. So we have symbology of numbers. So there's 9 months that the baby is within the womb. And so within the sweat lodge, where the rock pit is, they dig that out, and then that represents Tammuz, our belly button. And then the earth that they take out of there, sometimes they make it's kind of like making a corn row when you're going to plant a garden. So that represents the umbilical cord. And then when they make the altar, that represents the placenta. And so we say that when you go into a sweat lodge, then you're born and reborn, because we talk to the creator. We use the water as well. So the water, we can see it, feel it, touch it, smell it. But when we put it onto the rocks, and then it turns into steam, and it carries our prayers up to the creator. And so there's usually 4 rounds, and the rocks that we use in there, there will be 28 rocks. So remember I talked about the 28, the significance of the 28. And so there will be 4 rounds of 7 rocks, 7 rocks, where am I? 7 rocks each round. And so with the rocks, we say that we call them bear rocks. And this is the significance of the dipper, the Big Dipper. When you look up into the sky every night, you can see that Big Dipper. And the picture that she might be showing you is when the handle is down. And when the handle is down, then that means that's when we start our training, our physical training. But we call those bear rocks because there's the 7. If you look at those stars, if you count them, there's 7. And you can count them. There's another symbology of the 7. And so we do 4 rounds of 7 rocks each, and then we leave 1 in there for the creator. We leave 1. And so when we talked about the turtle and the symbology of the 13 moons and the 28 days, then that's also our year as well. And so I'm just trying to think in terms of if I've missed anything. You will see some of there's a list that she might be showing you of some of the protocols of when a baby is born, and when a mother is is carrying the baby for the 0 to 9 months. Remember, I talked about the 9, the symbolism of the 9. And so emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and culturally, those are the protections that I talked about. So during the birth, we're supposed to stay calm and relaxed, and we don't wish for anything except for a healthy baby. We try not to wish for a male or female. I have to say that I did wish for boys, and my mom promised me 5 boys, but I ended up with 1 biological son, 1 bonus son, and 3 daughters, 3 beautiful daughters that I love. They're my prides and joys. We stay active, and we part of our puberty training, that in order to have an easy birth, is it starts during our puberty training, and we are taught to carry rocks uphill, and we run uphill, and we what they do is the girls will carry it different than the boys. They'll kind of carry it between their legs and run uphill, and what that does is it builds your muscles. What I did is my mom told me to step on my baby's mouth so that they could be independent. And it was just my foot, putting my foot near the baby, because the baby was already born and close in that area. And we have our teas and medicines that we use as well. So we use rosebush tea. It just helps to shrink the uterus. And so that's what I was saying. Kul is the labor or the work. It also means work. And kul is being born, and uktila is a newborn. And so I already talked about the bonding period of the 1 to 10 days, and the protocol where the grandmothers will speak to the baby in the language. And one of the first things that they do is using that medicine, our first medicine, with water, and washing the baby's face and washing the baby. Sometimes they will leave the baby, but that's one of the things that they do. And like I was saying, the baby board provides security. It keeps the baby feeling like it's wrapped up tight in the womb, and it helps to straighten the back. There's a placenta protocol as well, where we want our babies to come back home with us. And so we will keep the placenta, and there's a process that we do, a protocol that we do to make sure that our babies come home. And then lots of times, before the baby is presented, then the baby maintains that isolation 10-day period. So that's part of the bonding period, and we say oops. And so that's just gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the protocols and practices, and some of the things that we did. And so I'm not sure how much time I have.
You have like 5 minutes, or you can do questions now if you want.
Okay, sure. We have 5 minutes. Did I go over? Thank you. Thank you all
5
for
minutes
listening.
for Q&A.
Oh, okay. I just want to say that, I just wanted to read this as well. This is one of one of the sayings that I found. The spirits invited you here onto earth. By your own design, you chose to come here, and you chose your parents. You came to this sacred lodge here on earth, and there is a huge, beautiful ceremony of life happening here on earth, on the round lodge, and we are not conductors of this. We, as parents, we try to provide that support and guidance for each and every one of our children. And I just want to say that as mothers, oh yeah, the other concept that I wanted to tie in is that if you see that image of the world, it's spinning in deepest, darkest blackness. So the blackness also represents the womb, and the earth is represented like the baby, or the baby inside the mother. And so when we talk about all of those concepts, what I've tried to do is to sort of help guide you and help to so that you are aware. And so when we hear Chaptik, it creates our own worldview, and it helps to establish our identity, and it helps us to maintain balance in our own worlds. And so we are scale people, and I didn't even talk about that. So we say there's still scalo, hatma scale, ultima scalo, scalo, and then Pasich, which is the future. And the scalo means that we are dreamers of the land. We are the ones, the humans in our language. And so, and part of when we're learning our ways, we call that Syilx Okanagan. Those are our cultures and our customs and our ways. And that's what we're trying to do, is to bring back those little bits and pieces. And so when we say why peace Naxil, that's a way to say goodbye. But this Naxil, also remember I said it's one group of individuals that you have feelings for. But when we say why peace Naxil with an X, and that means all of my relations. And like I say, not just the two-legged, the four-legged, the finned, the winged, the rooted, all life, all to me. And so, yeah, so I don't know if you have any questions. And so, yeah.
Yeah, we have some questions. I will, do you want me to ask them now?
Sure.
Okay. So the first question is, could you repeat what was the first word and the first world and the fourth world? Thank you for this beautiful presentation and sharing your wisdom.
Oh, well, we say Chaptik in some places. The Chaptik is the way that I don't like saying. It's our process of storytelling where we transmit knowledge. I want to say that when I say Chuwip law is our word for law, and that's nature's law, and that's in a spiral. And you see that all over the place. And so that's why I say it's in the universe. When you look at the star galaxies, you see that shape. If you look at the weather patterns on Earth, you will see that shape. If you look at the way tornado, it's in that shape. If you look at how when we're putting our tobacco on the fire, or you'll see that shape that goes up. And so we say the first world, sometimes when we're talking about the Chaptik, is water. When water, because the earth was frozen during the Chaptik. The tik means spark. And so that spark created our first world, which is water, and nothing can live without water. And so we have a covenant to look after that water. And that's why this way of me communicating with you is we use that gift of voice to speak on behalf of all of those things. That's the only distinction between us and all other life. And so water, and there, we have a lot of different, I'm trying to show you, we have different words. I always say when you see in a lot of the Kayula, the Indian paintings, you will always see hands. And I always say because they have different meanings. So it's water, then the minerals, which is the land, the earth, and then the rooted, the plants, and then the four-legged, and then the two-legged. So we're way over here. We're not hierarchical. And so we also have the still scale. We have how our people, it's like the evolution of our people. The still scale, our people were torn from the land. Hatma scale, the ones that followed after. Outma scale, the ones who became more proficient. Scale, and then the Kwasich, which is the future, and which is now. I wanted to say, like, I don't know if you guys are able to do this or if you can see, but we also have the markings of that 28 to show that we are part of creation. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 and 14 is that 28. So we have those reminders that we carry with each and every one of us that we are a part of that sacred numerology and part of that sacredness of Mother Earth.
Thank you. That was really great. Our next question is, I'm curious if the teachings of the world symbolized by hand is common to Indigenous communities, or it may be vary from people and place.
I think Indigenous people around the world have universal teachings and respect, and we don't just have rights, we also have responsibilities. It's reciprocity in order to maintain that balance. And you can see, I wanted to mention during the COVID, you can see we have teachings about Mother Earth and the balance and the environment. And you could see in some of the countries where there was pollution and smog, and when the world was standing still and those areas cleaned up, the air became clearer. You could see the whales coming back. You could see how life is maintaining that balance. It's coming back to a balance. And so we were also prophesized for our people. I'm using the wrong hand, but the colors of men were also acknowledged. So it would usually be my other hand, but the yellow, white, black, red, and in this one, there was a mix. So the things that happened this time of the world epidemic was prophesized and would start here, and then it would go to each one of these. And we were about a lot of our communities for the last, because we were isolated. And so when we talk about our responsibilities, then with that gift of voice, then we have a responsibility to look after all life. And that's part of that reciprocity. And that's part of, for us speaking out on behalf of all life. And us as the two-legged, as a scalo, then that's part of our responsibility. And Indigenous people around the world have that similar. They have the same way. It's like our worldview, and it's universal.
Great, thank you. Our next question thanks you for the teachings, and they were wondering, with the two different sides of the family providing discipline and spoiling, do both sides reconcile that the other has their role? And were there conflicts or has that resolved? So, and they're also wondering, um, they're a settler and how to reconcile sides on their family and if that they are often in conflict about this. I think it's a conflict of roles, like because you were saying one wants to spoil and the other one wants to discipline.
Nobody ever appreciates their disciplinarian until they're really, really old. And the disciplinarian is the one that helps us the most, but we don't appreciate them in the short term. We want the aunties and the grandmas that are going to spoil us, but so your mom and your auntie on your mom's side, your swawasa, you will know who they are because they're the ones that if it's time to get up and go to school or go do something, and then they'll be like, oh, just let them sleep for a little while longer. And then the disciplinarian auntie or uncle, and they'd be like, get up, time to get up, get your shoes on, come on, time to go do something. And you can see, not necessarily now, we've had family breakdowns in roles because of the residential school. Lots of our families were broken down, and those roles and responsibilities haven't carried on. So what I tried to do is try to get surrogate disciplinarians, like surrogate aunts. That's one of the things I wanted to say too within a family is that first cousins on both sides will be considered brothers and sisters, and aunts might be considered like a second mom. So there's a really close-knit group, and you will hear what that does is that helps the children in all aspects of life. If they need some help with somebody, then they have somebody a little bit older that looks out for them and will help them and help guide them. And so that's one of the differences within our families is that they have somebody like that. And I just want to say that the disciplinarians aren't appreciated, but they are the ones that sort of, you'll hear it in their tone of voice. And the nurturers, like I would just like to say, my brother-in-law ended up being the nurturer when I was trying to do some of the swim training with my kids, because you have to swim, you have to run in the wintertime, you have to, and I became the one that was doing these teachings. But what it does is it does create dissension, because it's hard for children to be objective about their parents and for parents to be objective about their children, or vice versa, you know what I mean. And so when there's outside entities, just like that family role, and the children will listen. And so my uncle, their uncle is the one that stopped me from doing those things and took pity on them. So he became the nurturer. And I'm like, I'm doing your role. You're supposed to be doing this. But I wanted them to experience that. So our teachings have carried on in some aspects. So we say with the water, if you can't do some of those ceremonial things, just turn the water on cold. And, at the end of your shower, use that water, talk to the water, pray to the water. The water is still medicine. So we use water in a lot of aspects of our life.
Thank you. We have another person wondering about the families on the two sides, and they were just wanting a reminder of the grandmother connection between the mother and the baby, and if you could repeat which side was it, the left or the right side of the family that was first introduced, and the primary caregivers of the next generations.
Lots of times it's the mother of the pregnant mother that will be there. In some cases, that doesn't always happen. And so there might be, the other grandmother might be there. So the grandmother's role for greeting the baby with the language and the song and prayer and like preparing that road of life. And sometimes we have elders that will do that. And I was asked to do that because that wasn't happening. So I wasn't old then. And so I just did that. I knew of that protocol. So that's what I did. And so in some cases, because we have our families, we don't have our extended families really close by. We're kind of in a nuclear family situation. We have surrogates. So we have somebody that we know. My friend she's not afraid to be the disciplinarian, and she carries a lot of knowledge and teachings, and you can hear it in her voice sometimes. So, but also the loving. Sometimes we're away from our parents even, so the mother and father can do that sometimes. Like when my grandson was born, and then I was like, which grandmother was trying to get first to the baby? They were trying to introduce the language and talk to the baby first. So if they're both there and they're both supportive, then that's all good. So I always say our ways are really simple, and if it becomes too complicated, then we're more spiritual, then it becomes more like religious practices that you have to do things. So in this way where we each carry a piece and we're putting things back together, then that's what we can do. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So, and good job in whatever you're doing. I'm proud of each and every one of you moms. I was a single mom. I know how hard the work was. I know the sacrifices that you made. I know the late nights. I know, I remember like coasting down the hill because we didn't have enough money for gas. So we coasted down, and I remember not having food, and everybody would be like, oh, what diet are you on? I'm like, oh, we ran out of food before I could go on a diet. So like as mothers, that's what we say, mama bear in each and every one of us comes out because of our love for our children. And I do want to say for young moms that babies are for life. Doesn't matter how old they get. We're always going to care about them. And so no matter where they are. And we try to maintain that relationship. I know when one of my daughters was gone far away, and just to maintain that connection, I just told her to look at the sun and the moon and the stars. And those were the same ones that I was looking at, so that she knew that I was saying a prayer to each one of those. Yes.
And then it was cloudy outside and I couldn't see the stars, so I started crying. So sometimes you have to elaborate on what you're trying to say. But I was the child. Our next question is there a correlation between grandmother's land-based medicine knowledge and wisdom and planetary health in terms of holistic wellness?
Could you repeat that?
Yep. Is there any correlation between grandmother's land-based medicine knowledge and wisdom with planetary health in terms of holistic wellness?
I started learning medicines at a really young age. And so the thing about medicines is the elders would teach me a medicine, and then but we do have people that are strictly medicine people. We have people, because we were more remote, and then our people would know all of the medicines. So we're seasonally based. So our year, like on that turtle, our year is named after the months of what is available. And so I think when you live in tune with nature and you know what's available, then you're more in tune with nature and you can see. You're able to make that connection. What we say, our Indigenous people around the world are saying that Mother Earth is in the purification process right now. And what we see with the fires, the floods, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, then that's Mother Earth going through a purification process. And so Indigenous people around the world are aware of that. And so that's universal. We will hear other people, they can be from any other part of the world, and they're able to understand that. The holistic, because the holistic part of our health, sometimes our people are at a poverty level, so they're not able to get a more balanced nutrition, and even going out to get our roots and our berries and our medicine is very expensive. So that's why the foods that we live on are of the most economical and which will feed our families. And so there's sort of the long-term detrimental effects. That's one of the things that I was going to say. The way that we keep our cultures going is with the babies and the young children. We will feed them our traditional foods and they give them a taste for that. And then they will want to continue that on. So the roots, the berries, the fish, and the deer meat, elk meat, and we keep feeding them. And so as the grandmother, they say that when the grandmothers will chew up the food for the babies and then feed the babies that, because the babies don't have that enzyme to digest that food. And then they say in retrospect, then those babies will take care of the grandmothers in a later on in life. And so we, our people have been speaking out on behalf of Mother Earth, but they're being criminalized and they're being sent to jails, and the brutalities that they face is unheard of. So, yes.
Thank you. And we just have 2 more questions left. The second last question is there a similar way of greeting, clearing the path for adults to help our way and resetting our purpose?
When we go into a sweat, what I say, if I think in terms of, if we were taught to set goals nowadays, like long-term, medium, and then short-term, like daily. So to me, it's what it does is when we're saying our prayers, and I'm not saying that's what we're doing in the sweat. It's similar to that. And so how I've been taught to pray is we pray outwards. So we're praying for everything, all life, and then me, and like I don't pray for what I want or need. I pray for everything else first. And then sometimes if I'm lucky, I might get to myself. But when we go into a sweat, then they say when we come out and then we're reborn. So that's why you hear people talk about going to sweats. And even though that process of doing that, it's helpful. So for adults, when people heard about that cocooning process, and then they started remembering, the grandmothers and some of the things that they did So those, even though you might not be aware as a baby, then that might have happened already for you. My friend does, there's lots of ceremonies that people do, even though they're not at puberty age, they're older and they want to go through some of those teachings, then that's what they'll do. They'll set up that. But it's a commitment for at least 13 moons, which is a little over a year, and sometimes could be 2 years. And so some of those commitments are if you're asking somebody for help. And sometimes when you go to ceremonies that are already existing, sometimes we brush people off or in various ways of helping them and sitting with them. And because of their grieving process, and there's ceremonies that have been done in specific locations. So I'm mostly in the interior. I do want to acknowledge that the West Coast and the prairies have different styles and different processes. So I'm not exactly sure where you're located, but there is differences within the different regions.
And then we just have our last question. Will you be giving access to the info sheet? So will those info sheets be uploaded as a resource afterwards?
I have like so much information. You mean just those images?
I think it was just the info, like the graph with the chart.
Oh, I haven't even finished working with those. What I'm trying to do is use the language to identify the protocols. If you want to contact me separately, I think my email address will be there. And that's part of what we do is, in order for our knowledge to carry on, that's what we do is we pass on that knowledge. And sometimes it's on a one-to-one basis. And here, just because I believe that us as mothers, we're most affected by the COVID. Women were affected and mothers. So women in the workforce had to stay home. Mothers were affected in their relationships, and mothers, they couldn't go out and work because they're taking care of their families. Remember I was saying when the Creator was handing out the gifts, where were the mothers? The mothers were taking care of their responsibilities. And so because of this last couple of years of what our women had to go through, and we're not even talking about all of the negative things. So I just wanted to share and acknowledge each and every one of your what you're going through and the sacrifices that you make. And so, yes.
Great. So is it okay if I share your email?
Yes.
Okay. I'll share that. And then did you have any last closing remarks before I close?
Well, when we're, a lot of my teachings have come from people that aren't here anymore. And I would like to acknowledge some of my traditional moms, Josephine George from the Yakima Nation, Emma Robbins from the Quesnel area, Albert Lightning. I wanted to say this is one of the things that a story that Albert Lightning told me about how his wife was selected, or how he selected his wife, because I'm part of horses. And so there was a group of women that were put forward for Albert Lightning's wife. And so he had his horse that he trained and he loved. And so he set his horse free and to go pick his wife, and that the horse did. And they had lived I think her name was Jessica. Albert Lightning's from Alberta. And so being around some traditional teachers, and my mom as well. My mom is, I think she's 90 or 92 years old. So she's 90 now. So everything that she went through, I was really lucky to have a really good mom. So she has helped me out, and my sister as well. So they both helped me out with all of my kids and my grandkids. And so I was so fortunate to have that in my life. So a couple of other women from down here on the West Coast, Lillian Howard, she was always looking after the people on the West Coast here. She lent her boys out, and her daughter, Celeste, as well. And for Catherine, I'm forgetting her last name, right?
Is Norris.
Yes, Kat Norris. She was my twin. When we worked together, we lived on the coast here, and Kat would make try to feed the people in her way. And so when we have people like that, we have other elders in the Okanagan, Marge Jameson and Millie Steele and other women that were taught that once you can cook and you can feed the people, then you can move on. And those type of women have taken on those type of roles for our women. And so they are like our role models, our heroes. And they're the ones that I look up to. And I wouldn't be here. We have other, like in Penticton, the Armstrong family, where I got a lot of my traditional teachings. My aunt, Delphine Derrickson, and her Richard Armstrong and Jeanette Armstrong. We got a lot of our teachings from those that came before us, and I really acknowledge and appreciate each and every one of them. And my own kids, I say each one of my kids are my greatest teachers. And so we can learn. We say that each and every one of us are teachers, and each and every one of my children have taught me something different. So I think that's about it. YP Syilx.
Thank you. Thank you to all our guests and to everyone for joining us today. It was, and thank you so much, Marlene, for the amazing discussion. It was great to learn about motherhood and the teachings that come with it from Mother Earth. And yeah, thank you. Just before we end the webinar, we'd love to bring your attention to our upcoming learning circles. We have, sorry, just pulling it up. Our continued search, honoring our stolen relatives with the IRSSS and MMIW team. That will be on May 25th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please sign up for our newsletter. The link will be in the chat. All our webinars are free to sign up for at our website at www.learningscircle.ubc.ca. And thank you for everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at our next Learning Circle. Live lived. Thank you.